first of all, we'll get back to the beginning. The test scores look really great. In that, I know when your students are worried about the grade point average, whether you got an A or a B or C, or how those points are affecting your overall grade. As an instructor, my goal is that you take away some concepts. And so even some of the wrong answers that were submitted, at least were along the lines that that concept was getting addressed. So if we were talking about a question that had to do with securities or HIPAA regulations, the wrong answer picked still had something in it to do with compliance or HIPAA or security. So that makes me feel good. It might not make you feel any better, but it made me feel good. So today we're going to talk about Information Services Department. We're starting Unit 3, and this is a lot more about structuring from the information systems design process, systems life cycles, the different types of information systems in healthcare. And so I'm going to start with the objectives today are going to be where is an Information Services or Information Systems Department located. In the world that I work, there's two components to an Information Services Department. There's the operations side and the application side. Some of the roles and responsibilities of different team members in those areas. And educational requirements and certifications. And I thought that was important as you all are in classes right now, looking for that little extra edge that will help you get into health information technology as opposed to just regular information technologies or information sciences. So we have the operations and how did we miss locations? Did I put too fast? Locations. So in my experience, we are often located in the basement. It's usually windowless, dark. At Community, we used to be next to each other, two separate rooms with a data center between us, but applications had one room and operations had the other. In other areas or other hospital services or other facilities, you might be located off campus. You might be in the same room, or you might be totally removed from each other. Sometimes the application side, those analysts might not even be part of the IT department, and they might not even follow the IT structure. Last lecture, Tom had asked me if I'm an employee of the IT department or if I'm an employee of, say, like the ER or the nursing department, and I fall under the structure of IT. My director is the IT director of applications. But there's just kind of a mix, and as I said in the last lecture, at Community, we're trying to get all the applications analysts under IT because of the different ways security is managed. Being under the IT department, I have a lot more flexibility and a lot more access to the actual servers and things that I need for reporting and for maintenance from an applications perspective than I would if I was sitting under the ER. They're not going to let me have access to things because it's harder to monitor me or control what I'm doing. So, as I said, at Community, we used to be in the same area in the basement, windowless, next to each other with the data center between us. Now operations is located in the basement by that data center, and they've moved us off campus, the applications analyst, the applications department. So there's some challenges because we're working remotely, and I shared with you all a story of the half an hour I spent trying to help somebody because the application wouldn't launch and it was flickering, only to find out there was a key stuck on the keyboard. And working remotely, I just couldn't see that. Now I know what the screen looks like when that happens and how it flickers. Maybe that would be something I would think of. And I had asked them to check those things, but it's challenging because you don't really know what the user's doing. You tell them to hit Control F5 and they hit Alt F5. And they swear they're hitting Control F5 and you can't physically see what their fingers are doing. And I can tell you they don't always do what you're suggesting, not because they just don't know. They just don't understand. That's the challenge of what applications analysts do, and even our service desk. Benefits of working remotely, my office is usually quiet. I don't have a door for everybody to knock on the way I did in the basement. People would always be coming through, asking questions. And, you know, there's even days I get to work in my PJs or in other if I worked for other companies, I'd get to work in my PJs and drink lots of coffee sitting on my couch. So there are some advantages, there are some disadvantages, and personally I rely heavily on operations because they're situated in the hospital. If I can't get to a user to drive that distance, I know I can call them and have somebody go up and work with me directly to augment what I'm trying to do for that user. So again, we have the two different areas, operations and applications. And operations consist of three main components that I address as it relates to my world. And that's the service desk, the system engineers, and the network engineers. And service desk, and we're going to get into each one of these individually, but the service desk is that first line support, the help desk. You might know it as, we're trying to change the terminology to service desk. System engineers are doing your Windows-based applications, securities, and antivirus softwares at the desktop. And then there's the network engineers, which are maintaining the servers, building doing the data center design and those things. Applications consist of the clinical analysts and the business analysts. And so when we get into information systems and health information systems in the next couple of lectures that Tom's going to be presenting, that will make a little bit more sense. But there's clinical analysts are usually doing with that human interface with the clinicians as they're trying to document, as they're trying to record their data. And the business analysts are usually working on the financial side, registration processes, billing processes, materials management processes. So the service desk is your first line support. They use the ITIL model, and for the life of me, I had it memorized. ITIL, I believe, is Information Technology Institute's library. It's that other I that I'm having trouble with, but that's part of your discussion forum is doing some research on ITIL. It is the standard right now for service desk modeling. It's a customer service model, but there's many different components to it that go through a whole system lifecycle design. It's not just service desk, but that's where it starts. Really trying to promote a culture of customer service. This is the face of the IT department. When somebody calls and their computer's not working, they're going to get that service desk. They need someone who's can be a little bit calm, always talking with a smile. And I can tell you, Vincent on our service desk gets there at 7:30 in the morning and has to deal with that immediate phone ringing. I bet you he does 20 calls in the first 10 minutes he's there. And being able to manage that too. It's the system being down, can I put you on hold versus, the password reset. Thanks for calling. You know what? Let me get right back to you. Or taking that quick message and still being able to continue with other things as the phone is ringing. They also do desktop deployment. And so if there's applications that need to be loaded at the desktop level, and they may load some of our applications for us if they have to be locally installed. But most of when we talk about desktop deployment, they're working with the hardware. So they might be CPUs, swapping out bad keyboards and mice, swapping out monitors. They're refurbishing PCs and redeploying them and laptops. And then the applications they're installing will be the drivers for the printers. The drivers for maybe a particular device if there's something that needed to be connected. And again, a hardware, they're loaded device drivers. They help with desktop icons and getting those links up if somebody has a shared folder somewhere. The service desk will be the ones that will put that link on the desktop to that shared folder that they need. And then we have system engineers, and that's a new term that we're developing in our department. Desktop applications and applications delivery. And the difference between that and what the service desk is doing is the system engineers are in the configuration side of the deployment of the day-to-day application. So when we talk about the operating systems being whether it's Windows XP or Windows 7, when we talk about Outlook, that configurability of Microsoft Outlook and how it's going to be delivered as far as what we're going to see when we're using the Outlook Web API versus when we're using it when we're directly on the network, the securities around it, the McAfee antivirus softwares, what they're going to let through the spam filters. Those are the things that they're configuring when we talk about application delivery. It's also what environment it's going to be in. Are we going to put things out on a share? Is it going to be in a Citrix environment where we can access? Is it a web-based program? Those are application deliveries. They also work with telephony. We're practicing that word. and communications. And that's the whole gamut of the actual telephone hardware, voice over IP, the configuration of people's voicemails, managing the whole main desk when you walk into our hospital has a huge switchboard that's all managed through a software applications for telephony that allows them to key in the room number or look up a person by last name and connect to. And then we've got our network engineers, which have to do with all of the connectivity, and by that, it's the hardwired connectivity. Is it going to be fiber optic? Is it TCP/IP protocols? Wireless connectivity, that's all managed under connectivity. There's the server maintenance. So they do a lot of the storage, working closely with specific applications analysts that might need a specific amount of storage for their application because it's image storing for the PACS system or for a radiology system. But they're the ones that get the server, the SANs, they partition them, they allocate the, what was the big fancy word they were using for me yesterday? I was doing really good. Carving up space on the SAN. That was their big phrase from yesterday. Carving up space on the SAN. So if they've got 20 terabytes, they're going to decide that the ER application can have 2 terabytes and the EEG application is going to have 5 terabytes and how it's going to be partitioned across that SAN array. If they need to do those swaps with the hard disks that go bad, they are responsible for that. They have automatic monitoring set up that sets off their pagers. So if the system crashes in the middle of the night or if they start getting errors, trying to catch it before you get really bad SCSIs and NTFS errors to where sectors are being lost on the disk. And the data center design. I don't know about all facilities. We put in a new data center, so our network engineers were very involved in how they wanted what kind of server racks they wanted, how they wanted the cooling system, what kind of fire suppression they wanted, the arrangement of the servers in there, and how the cable management was done. We have a double cooling system. We have the regular facility-wide air conditioning, and then they have an in-row server cooling system that brings in the air over across the servers up through a central aisle and then redistributes that air and cools it. All of those things have a lot to do with network engineering. So again, a little bit more about the service desk in a little more detail. What we really expect, if we were looking for a service desk person, and that's really an entry point into the IT department, particularly an entry point for IT if you don't come from a clinical background. I can tell you, I suppose if I was desperate for a job and couldn't get hired as a nurse, I could look at the service desk and they might consider me, but my background wasn't in computers. They're really looking for the person that has grown up playing on computers or understands the guts of a computer. I go down there and they've got screws and hardware and ribbons laying all over the place. I'm scared to death to take a computer apart. The last time I took a hard drive apart, I shorted it out because I didn't have it grounded when I was trying to replace the wireless card. So they're the ones that do all that, replacing motherboards, putting in new NIC cards, a lot of that hardware stuff. They need to understand that ITIL triage because they're the first line when somebody calls. So they need to understand, is this going to be an incident? And as you look up some of the ITIL stuff, these are some terms that will come up. And the severity of that incident. And an incident is anything that's a problem. No one uses a problem because ITIL has a different word for problem. But an incident is an issue. So a password reset can be an incident. The PACS system, if they're trying to do radiology and they can't get an image to upload, can be an incident. But then if the whole network goes down, you're going to have one person call and say, hey, I can't get logged onto my email. Then you have another person call that says, I can't get net access to come up. And another person that's going to call and say, hey, I can't get the PACS imaging to come up. And then at some point they're like, we're getting these 3 calls from 3 different places, but you know what? The network's down. That's the problem. So the problem is a network being down, and then you associate each one of these incidents to that ticketing. It is a whole big ticketing system. So that's what I'm talking about triage. What's the severity of it? How soon does it need to be addressed? And is it affecting patient care? Is it a house-wide problem? Is it a local problem? Is it a picnic, person in chair, not in computer? Interacting directly with healthcare workers. These people are going up. I mean, if you tell them that your monitor's not working, your computer's not working, They might be going directly into a patient care area. That computer might be in the patient's room. So you still have to be professional. You still have to be sensitive to the needs of the patient. The patient still deserves privacy. They still deserve a professional attitude and watching language use and things. They come from all levels of education and experience, and so we have some people in the operations department that have high school degrees, or high school education diplomas. We have people with associate degrees. We have people with bachelor's degrees. Again, some of the applications analysts that had information science degrees or computer science degrees started out working on service desks and learning that side of it before they migrated up to applications analysts. The big thing for the service desk in all of operations is experience. Almost more, I think, than particularly their educational background. System engineers, same kind of thing. They're going to interact with the public. They're less likely to be in a patient room or in a patient care area, but they still have to have customer service skills, those troubleshooting skills. Again, they're working remotely, just at the service desk, as most of us are. Being able to understand and walk somebody through a series of steps, write a procedure. They're really concerned about the viruses, the trojans, the worms. They have to monitor and keep up to date with the latest antivirus upgrades, and also understand what exactly happens in that upgrade. It's one thing to just click your computer and install your updates, but they have to be able to read the system release and the release notes on what those updates are doing. I can tell you one of the times McAfee updated, there was something in their Win32 shut down my EEG system. Couldn't make it work. And we had to go in and work with McAfee to take that piece of turn off that piece of programming or configuration of McAfee in order to make it work. Again, it's all levels of education and experience. Many of these folks, and you'll see on some other slides, get certified in particular areas, Microsoft certifications, antivirus certifications and things in order to make them better at their job. Network engineers. They have customer service skills. They may be in patient care areas, although generally it's much more rare. They're going to go in and maybe help with pulling cable, or during a remodel and design, they're involved in the layout of where they're going to put that switch closet. So they might be in that area during that time, swapping something in and out, but for the most part, they are going into the areas because they are working with the desktop components of the service desk, or even the system engineers are. They have to keep current on server platforms and new environments that come out, current connectivity methods, the speeds. We talk about, what is it? And I'm going to get stuck on HD, and I'm going to try to sound really stupid. You guys help me out. What is it, 80/20? What's the internet? You always want to know if you have it's like saying 1080p. Oh well. I totally just botched that one. 801 dot something to work. If your device, in order to do wireless, you have to have the 801 something or whatever. So whatever those protocols are. They are interacting directly with healthcare workers, although they might not be in patient care areas. So having a background in healthcare or healthcare information technologies is helpful because you're understanding where these folks are coming from, a little bit about the jobs that they do. Vic? Well, I have my moments. And again, working closely with facility maintenance. So when we talk about the system lifecycle designs and that infrastructure of a facility, they should be directly involved whenever we're doing remodels or additions of new services that are going to be in a new actual physical location. If you remember back a few lectures ago when we were looking at that old hospital in Pennsylvania, that's what they're looking at, the brick walls, where we're going to put the data centers, where we're going to put the switch closets, how we're going to run those wires. And although we have electricians and stuff that will run the cabling, it's still understanding how it's going to come out of the ceiling. The electrician's only going to go so far, and then from there, we have to explain to them what type of plate we need because of the way we're terminating those ends. How it's going to, should it come out of the ceiling and drop down into the server rack, or should it come out of the side of the wall, or does it need to come off through the floor? Why is there a sprinkler head in the switch closet? Don't even get me started with that. So the service desk, some of the certifications they get, and some of you may be familiar with them. There's the CompTIA test, A+, which I know Tom teaches a class, I think, that has the A+ components to it. Microsoft Certified IT Professionals, some Cisco certifications. Cisco's really big. Any of you that were big 24 fans, everything was Cisco, in case you didn't notice that every time Jack got something on his phone, it was Cisco system. I'm done. System admins or the system engineers also can have the NCITP. There's some Citrix stuff they get, also some Cisco and other advanced levels of some Cisco certifications. And these are out there kind of just for you to look at. If there are things that you're curious about, not knowing what kind of career opportunities are out there for you, these are some things that you can look at. You may even know of or have maybe have taken some of them, been involved in some of them. Network engineering has some, again, it's another level of Cisco certifications. There's wireless and VMware type certifications. And again, their level of education can span that gamut. A lot of times the job descriptions will say things like a bachelor's degree or 5+ years experience equivalent. So it doesn't necessarily have to be a computer information or computer science degree or information technologies degree. Maybe they have a bachelor's in sociology, but they always were involved in, maybe they had a side, computer building business or something they did, or they've done consulting. They have a background in that information, and they've worked in there for 5+ years. So applications, when we're talking about applications and people think about the actual software, as a department, the applications side of the information systems department refers to the specialty software that's associated for specific operational needs. And this is house-wide. So again, we have the Microsoft stuff. Everybody uses Microsoft Office and those different applications. But these are very specific to the needs of an organization, specific departments within the organization, and they're highly configurable or customizable. So again, when we talk about something like Outlook, we can set the parameters on the spam filters and what's going to get through, and people can arrange their viewing panes and their out-of-office messaging and some of those. But the system engineers can't go in and reprogram the components of Microsoft Outlook. They can't do anything outside of a securities type level. Where these applications, we're actually in there being able to program, whether it's in Visual Basic or it's HTML or some JavaScripting, we can actually change the whole look. We're given a skeleton platform and changing the whole look. That's why when we talk about what informaticians can or cannot do, that work falls into applications, because that's part of that workflow design I'm doing is where do I want that checkbox? And I can actually program it to that level. Some informaticians are just on that understanding side. They don't actually get involved in programming, but they can then come back between the clinical folks and the IT applications folks that can and be able to tell them what those needs are because they understand it. So I gave you an example here with business applications. We have a materials management system, and I'm sure they use Excel all the time as a spreadsheet management for whatever it is they're doing out of their reporting. A lot of their reports are pulled out of that system and dumped into Excel because it's a lot more easy to manipulate the information that way. But the actual program that we're using at Community that has all their supplies, that database of inventory and how they place their ordering and do their par levels inventory management is called Lawson. So it's nothing that anyone else, I mean, other than if you were specific to materials management, would ever have a use for. You're not going to have Lawson in your house for any reason. It's part of your culture network. So business analysts and clinical analysts. Business analysts, like I talked about, we do registration, so that's the intake of the patient, getting their demographic information, their insurance information that's related to billing, because that's related to fiscal and patient accounting. So fiscal is anything that has to do with the finances of the organization. Materials management, so how are all our supplies printing, the paper for that printing, and any healthcare supplies that we have in the hospital. We're going to come out of materials management. Other applications that might be specific to business needs and database management. Our database analysts, we now have two, but they have to work with both sides. So they're interfacing from the registration into the clinical applications. They're interfacing back from some of that clinical information that is used in billing. So we're collecting the diagnosis on the clinical side, but then sending that diagnosis code back to the business side. So those are the things they actually fall in both worlds. Clinical analysts, you'll hear it called a clinical information system, or CIS. There's a whole tree, and I'm not going to go into a lot of detail because it's what you're going to get in the next couple lectures from Tom. But you'll hear things: lab information systems, radiology information systems, surgery information systems. There's emergency department information systems. Really, any area can have an information system. It's just where all that data is collected. And then there's the clinical informatics, which we talked about a little bit last week. All of that data that then is being collected in these applications, these information systems, and how it's being managed, how it's being analyzed, and then redistributed or extracted and redistributed for purposes of compliance, anything that's regulatory, helping with billing or to improve patient outcomes. And a little aside, so the analysts, some of the analysts really get a lot more of the operations side. They came from a background, again, in computer science or in information technology at some level to where when it comes to being able to explain a SAN array or understanding, getting into the server maintenance, at some level we all understand a little bit of that. I understand enough to break it. I understand enough to when I'm feeling like operations isn't listening to me, I can get into the server myself and look at some of the log files and say, you know, I've always heard NTFS is a bad thing. Why do I have 4 of them in the last 2 hours? I'll look up the codes, try to find out if there's, is it really a bad thing? If I get an ISCED report with an NTFS error, I get a little bit nervous. That's all the level of knowledge I have, but it's enough for me to say, all right, guys, look, here it is. I've had these many errors in this short period of time. At the same time, the users are calling me saying that the system's been slow. I've been able to correlate a slowness or a glitch on their screen or loss of data with the same time frame that these errors happened. I think I have a bad sector of some sort. Help. Help now. I'm losing data. So we get into a little bit of both sides from that perspective. I've spent many times, as I said before, cleaning labels out of printers, redeploying monitors, trying to work with the hardware side when I'm doing the ergonomics components and what we need, the bedside monitoring devices. So there's a lot more that crosses probably into operations than operations crosses into applications. But operations does have some knowledge, at least they have to, of what we do, or they couldn't manage the service desk. So they need to be able, when that ticket comes in, to understand the person's calling about surgery, and what they're saying is they've got a patient on the table that's under anesthesia and something's going bad. Technically, who's the person I need to get this to and need to get it to now? Because I wouldn't want to be the patient asleep on the table wondering if I'm going to wake up, because I don't know what's going on in the room around me, neither do they. So education with applications, and this isn't meant to sound negative to anything. I can tell you the majority of the applications analysts all have a minimum of a bachelor's degree in something. Doesn't necessarily have to be in computer science. I don't have a bachelor's in anything but nursing. What I can tell you is my specific job description said bachelor's required, master's preferred to do the job that they wanted from me. So would they take an associate degree nurse? They might, if they had a bachelor's in something else. But the way my job description has read is it says bachelor's required, and I believe mine specifically says bachelor's in nursing. So there may be some more strict cutoffs of minimum education requirements to do application with analysts. It also depends on what the application is that's being analyzed, that's being supported. We have a pharmacy tech, and I honestly can't tell you if a pharmacy tech has a bachelor's or not. I can tell you if we had a respiratory specific program that they would probably consider a respiratory therapist crossing over into applications. But it certainly would be strongly encouraged and supported if they wanted to pursue further education. But and again, it would depend on the level of need for that application. If it was really, really, really specific to RT, and that's all that they ever expected that respiratory therapist to do, then that would probably be good if they have a big experience in respiratory therapy and that workflow, those kinds of things. Because we'll train them the technical stuff. What you don't want to get is an clinical applications analyst that's so focused in one area and doesn't have some of those broader communication skills. That's where, when people talk about those well-rounded degrees, it's that communication, being able to talk with the C-suite. It's not that people don't have those skills, and some people have it without being trained. But when you're looking for a job, and when you're looking at the job descriptions, that's why those job descriptions or requirements list it that way, because it's the best that somebody can do when they're looking for an employee. If they have this minimum level, chances are they're going to get somebody that has those skills as well. So some other certifications, we don't have as many certifications. When you see the operations side certifications, and I don't know why applications came up first, and it concerns me that I, for some reason, have lost. Did I just skip over? Oh, we did all the certifications. Holy cow. Wow. I'm getting better than that. Because of the degrees that they're associated with, they don't have as many certifications. However, they have many of the same. So a lot of our folks will get Microsoft certified in some area of Microsoft. Against the certified IT professionals, there's a database administrator. I have a certification. I'm board certified in nursing informatics specifically. There's project management certifications. There's a whole level of them. I just put up there a PMP because that's what one of our folks has right now. Siemens and Lawson, those are vendor specific that you can get. And certifications might be the wrong word, because it's not certifications from sitting in a classroom for 8 to 12 weeks or for a whole couple semesters or a year of school, but we get a certificate that we've gone through a particular amount of training. So for the ER system that I support, I had to sit through 24 hours or something like that, a week's worth of classroom time, and had to take a test in order to be allowed to program. Because although it's HTML and Java, there's a lot of HTML proprietary coding that they call it. So they have some markup characters that are specific to their program that you would be able to use if you were just working out on the web. And then there's a link there if anybody has any other interest in Microsoft certs, if you weren't familiar with them originally. The IT department's 24/7, 365. In most places, even in business, regardless if it was healthcare related, what's unique about a healthcare environment with an information services department is we can't just plan to do downtime at 6 p.m. because the offices are closed. We may still have somebody still in surgery. We may have somebody in surgery at 3 a.m. if they've come in from a bad car accident. Right now we have some critical NICU babies, and they're talking about doing some downtime to do some stuff that affects our neonatal intensive care unit. They can't just do that. These babies are events. We either have to really prepare to make sure everything is on generator backup and ready to go, or they just postpone it. How critical is it for what they need to do? Can they wait a couple weeks, or do we need to do it during the day when there's more staff, and how does that impact the rest of the house? I'm on call 24/7. The service desk usually has a network engineer and a service desk person to take the first calls. Currently in the application side, although we've discussed it, everyone is so individualized over there that we each kind of take call for ourselves. So if it ever goes off during the day when I'm here, that's the one thing unless somebody's really going to criticize me for it, I don't ever turn my BlackBerry completely off by my pager, because the way it's set, it buzzes all the time, and I have it set to buzz. But if I get paged, it makes this god-awful, horrific noise if it's in the case. So if I'm in a private meeting and I can sit like you all are sitting in a classroom, I'll take it out of the case and lay it there where I can see it, so it'll light up and I can tell if it's a page versus a phone call. But it's always on 24/7 in my house. If it makes that horrible noise, I know that I need it somewhere. And again, we can't take a vacation altogether. We have a thing coming up where most of us are going to Kansas City, and so we're going to be working remote from Kansas basically, because if anything comes up, there's still things that we have to do, daily systems checks that we do. We're going to have to do them before our classes start in Kansas, and then at the end of the day, double check things. And periodically, we have our computers with us, we have our iPhones and Blackberries with us, looking for those messages. Is there something going on? Does it need our attention right now? Can it wait till 5 o'clock when I'm done with my class? So in summary, where's the Information Services Department located? It could be located anywhere. It might not even be within the facility that it's supporting. It could be remotely. It could be in another country, outsourced. And there's good reasons for that. It's not just because it's cheaper. Really, in India, it works better for 24/7. I just wish I could understand it sometimes. Operations and applications, and the applications analysts need to work as a team. Without them, they keep the house running. If I don't have them, my stuff won't work. If they don't have me, they don't know how to help the other people when they call and say their stuff isn't working. Operations usually is that front line, the face of IT. Even if physically they aren't seeing them, they're the first persons they usually talk to. They're going to call the service desk hopefully before they call me, so it's their tone of voice, it's their skills in troubleshooting to figure out what to do next in their patients. That's really what people think of when they think of IT. Applications is responsible for organization-specific, operational specific applications, not just the everyday, day-to-day desktop applications that you can use, like the stuff you would use at home. Applications do more workflow on that. In order to do the data collection and data analysis, we'll do system lifecycle designs involved in the planning and implementing of an information systems. Educational requirements are really up to the employer. It runs the gamut. Highly encourage that people continue with professional certifications or education to stay current in their field, because technology is always changing. And there are many that are available and very specialized. Any questions? Down and dirty? On time? Yeah. So, good job on your tests. Look for the lecture to be posted. There's a discussion form that's out there. I put some links and I put a PDF, which is copyrighted material with big X stuff on there that says it's copyright type stuff. It's only for educational purposes. It's the first few pages of my ITIL book. I had to sit through ITIL fundamentals or foundations and got certified. But it's to give you an overview of what ITIL is about. I thought it was very important, again, when I talk about what I hope for this class, is giving you tools and information that when you get out into the workforce, you've heard about, have prepared you to take that next step. ITIL is the leading standard right now for service desk and operations side support and application support. It's how we've all been trained. So whether it was in the organization, the operations side, the analyst side, application side, we've all sat through this ITIL foundations. And having some background, I can tell you right now that if you came to Community Medical Center for a job and you have knowledge of ITIL, that puts you at the top of that list if you're the same as somebody else, because that's what we're looking for. It's a very expensive course to go through, and it's a big concept of understanding. And so really when you look at that discussion forum, I'm hoping you come out with a concept of because the certifications are enormous. I mean, you can go in ITIL to a master level, which takes, there's different components of it. I want you to take away the concept that it's a structured process with procedure for managing information services is really what I hope you get out of whatever information you read. So there is stuff out there. Don't hesitate to email me or ask me questions if you need help. Okay? Have a great weekend.
Yeah, you too. party parties?